Hello and welcome to another episode of Talk TV. I'm your host, Doug Brendel. Today we have a lawyer in the studio, and Chandan Manansingh, I hope I'm saying that correctly.
Close.
Close enough, he says. He's going to first give us some tips on what to do when you're arrested for a DUI. You don't have to be at the mercy of the system, so tell us about that, Chandan. What do we want to do if we are arrested for a DUI, and how can you help us out?
Well, obviously, the first thing you want to do is make sure that you contact an attorney,
Right.
Whether it be me or someone else. It is imperative that you get representation on these issues because a lot of people don't contemplate all of the different consequences that are involved once you're arrested, really for any offense, whether it even be a minor misdemeanor, which DUI is also a misdemeanor, but you want to make sure that you retain counsel to protect your reputation, to protect any professional licenses that you may have. I get a lot of clients that are nurses or doctors, or even one or two that may be attorneys, and all of those boards govern professional conduct. And so, for example, when you go to renew your license, then they're going to ask you about whether or not you've been arrested, and having a conviction for a DUI can have very negative consequences. I know for a fact, actually, nurses cannot practice with a DUI conviction. And so I guess the first thing when you get arrested for a DUI is to make sure that you really are thinking about all of the different consequences that are coming into play, and not just the offense itself, because you could get kind of tunnel vision just looking at the singular offense,
Right.
rather than looking at the greater picture of how it's going to impact your life in the future.
From square one, let's say the field sobriety test and the breathalyzer, you really can't refuse to do those, can you?
You can refuse the field sobriety test, and there may be times when that's a good idea. If you have a medical impairment, for example,
Like
and
you might be in
can't do it,
diabetic shock.
right? Or you've had knee surgery because one of the tests is a one-legged stand. Then you may not be able to perform the test. So you shouldn't perform what you cannot perform, and what you can verifiably prove that you're unable to perform. What you can't refuse, ultimately, and that's Nevada's implied consent law, is to take either a breath or blood test.
Now, what about if they suspect that you're on something other than alcohol? They can do a breathalyzer for alcohol, but what if they say, you've been smoking weed, or
Right.
you look like you're on something else? Do they have the right to take you to the hospital and draw your blood?
Absolutely.
Or, really?
Right. Great
You can't
question.
say,
And, there are certain amounts of metabolites. I get a lot of clients, believe it or not, that actually have prescriptions for various drugs. Let's use an example of a recent client, a Xanax prescription. And so she was driving under the influence, and so she has a legitimate prescription. She has the metabolites in her system, so she could still be charged with a DUI, even though you are doing something that's legally permissible. You're still not allowed to drive under the influence of an intoxicant.
Okay. And how harsh are the laws now in Nevada? I mean,
Laws
you
are
do want to
fairly
get
harsh.
you definitely
Yeah.
want to get a lawyer to protect you, because it can come down pretty hard.
Yeah, the laws are, I've moved here from Florida not that long ago, and in comparison, Nevada's got some fairly tough DUI laws. One example, and a big concern for a lot of my clients, is the suspension of the license. You're at play for a first-time DUI for a suspension, a mandatory suspension of 90 days. There's some things that we can do to lessen that. You can get a hardship license after a certain period of time, and you can also challenge the suspension at an administrative hearing. And so that's, again, the nice thing about having an attorney there is that, I always tell clients, you give me your problems, and then I take care of them from there. So you can kind of breathe a sigh of relief that you're in good hands, that it's taken care of, and that you don't have to worry about all of the ins and outs and what to do here on in.
Great. Now, just on a separate note, real quick, you're with the Las Vegas Litigation Firm.
Correct.
And it's convenient, I suppose, for you to be in Pahrump. Do you live in Pahrump and work out of there? Or?
No, I don't live in Pahrump, but I travel out here for different cases that I have, so I
Okay.
make myself available.
Okay.
But everything is based right now out of Las Vegas. We're looking at maybe opening an office here in the future,
Okay.
but that's still in the works.
Okay, good deal. So some of the other repercussions of the DUIs that you might be able to help somebody out with, there are the employment consequences, as you talked
Right.
about, and what about somebody who says they ought to dismiss this case? You can help them out with that too,
Sure,
right?
there are a number
Because-
of reasons. I tell people that there's some reasons that you can get a case dismissed. You can get them dismissed for technical reasons. The blood draws or the breath tests have to occur after a certain amount of time after you were physically in control of the vehicle. And so one of the things my firm does is make sure that we go through the file, go through the evidence very carefully, very thoroughly to make sure that any reason that you may be able to get your case dismissed on a technical basis, that is done. You can challenge the stop. That's another reason. That's a legal reason, not a technical reason. But if the officer didn't have probable cause, let's say, to stop the vehicle,
right.
that's another reason that you can get the charge dismissed. And that's also a great reason to be able to keep your license active at the administrative hearing.
What about these wolf pack things where everybody has to go through, the checkpoint?
Yes.
Are those legal? Are those constitutional?
Those are legal. Those are they've been challenged and they're constitutionally valid. They're allowed to do the checkpoints as long as they're not selecting certain areas or just targeting certain neighborhoods. But
Okay.
as long as it meets some of the different neutrality challenges, that they are permissible.
Interesting. Just on another note, also, if somebody cannot afford upfront to pay the legal fees, you
Right.
have payment plans available, right?
Sure, the economy's tough right now, and so dealing with all of the different consequences of the DUI, including the cost, can be tough. So we try to work with people to set up payment plans. You can pay on my website using a credit card, so some people just do that every month. The nice thing about these is that they can roll out for a little period of time, so the sooner you retain representation, it's better on a number of levels. It's better because we can get discovery paperwork earlier and look at your case. We can handle the licensing issues earlier. And as well, it gives you some opportunity to make sure that the payment isn't out of control. If you have a trial set up next month, then you're going to end up having to pay the lump sum of the balance.
Right.
But if you're doing it at your first appearance, then you're going to have a couple of months to make the payments and get everything in order. So it makes that burden a lot easier, and we try to work with everyone.
Are you familiar with the judges out here and the way they work and things like that? Does
Yeah,
that matter? Or, if you know the law, you know the law. Should it be the same in any
Right.
courtroom?
It is. Different counties do different things. In
Right.
Las Vegas, certain number of the courts are more strict than others. Nye County has its own operational procedures. The judges really only come into play when you have a trial or a pending motion before the court, which is usually under the operation of law. So knowing them per se, we assume, right, our judges are facially neutral, whether you know them or not. So, that technically shouldn't give any tactical advantage to either side.
I see. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to touch on some of the other areas of law that Chandan works in and that his firm can handle. So don't go anywhere. We will be right back. And we're back, and as you saw earlier, we are with attorney Chandan Manansingh. And
There you go.
I'm
You
good.
got it.
He
You
says
got
I
it.
got it that time. Good deal. And anyway, I just want to get your last thoughts on this. Let's say I've been arrested for a DUI. So you take it from there and tell me
Okay.
what's what.
Well, you want to make sure, like I said, that you get competent counsel. DUIs are a niche specialty within the law. You want to make sure that you get someone that's familiar with the administrative hearing process through the DMV, because there's two separate proceedings. You've got the DMV and you've got the criminal case. You want to make sure that you get someone that's familiar with the different instruments that the police use, the intoxilizer, how they run the blood draws, and make sure that chain of custody rules are followed. And that's going to go through and not just negotiate some type of resolution for you, but look to make sure that you're going to get a result or get this case dismissed where you can, because the DUIs have very intense consequences for a long time to come. So even right now, if you don't have a professional license, maybe in the future you do. Or unfortunately, when you're applying for that job, if you've gotten a poor resolution, you're going to have to check that box off that you've been arrested for something. And so those are the things that you want to avoid to protect your future. So it's worth it in the long run to make sure that you retain competent counsel to handle these matters for you. Plus, it alleviates a huge headache and burden off of your shoulders, and that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Here to help you out in all those different ways.
Losing the driver's license is huge.
It is. It's
in
very
the United
tough.
States.
Yeah.
Can't hardly function without it.
No, you can't, especially out here in Pahrump. I mean, it's going to be extremely difficult to get through that.
All right. Very good. Well, thanks for joining us today on Talk TV, Chandan. And folks, I just want to give you a heads up here. We're going to have Chandan back on again. And he doesn't just specialize in the DUI. Their firm handles all areas of law, and he's also very competent in family law. So that'll be coming up sometime soon. Keep it on 46.4, the TV Guide channel when you can, and catch Talk TV. For today, that's it. Have a great day. Hello and welcome again to Talk TV. I'm your host, Doug Brendel. Let's call this Part 2. I am joined again by Chandan Manansingh. He is a lawyer and he has something to tell us about family law. This is one of those really touchy areas where it seems like people don't want to be nice, right? Well, let's be civil, let's handle it in court, and let's have a good attorney to do that. You're the man to do that, right, Chandan?
Yes, sir.
All right. So give us an idea of what all you guys handle in family law.
Well, we handle all the different issues of family law, from child support, child custody, asset division, debts, visitation, or pickup orders. Basically, any type of family law issue is something that we would be able to handle and deal with for you.
All right, good deal. And are there people who just sweep a lot of these problems under the rug and say, well, I can't afford to get a lawyer. My child support's too much, but if I get a lawyer, it's going to cost me to do that. And in the end, it's disastrous, right?
It's absolutely a disaster. Just like with all things, it's better to deal with these things head on early on when you foresee a storm coming at you. Especially in the child support arena. You can ask for child support to be modified if you've lost your job, if you've suffered a significant decrease of income, if you have some type of reason. Especially in today's economy, people aren't necessarily getting fired, but they may get their hours reduced. And so until you deal with that through the courts, asking them to modify that child support award, then they're going to assume that you're going to continue to pay. And then you're going to end up in arrears. And then you're going to end up getting your license suspended and revoked and being unable to drive, right? And end up with that windfall again of unintended poor consequences rather than dealing with it early on.
Just out of curiosity, though, and I have to say I'm a victim of that, or, well, I guess if I didn't pay, I'm not really a victim, but I got behind on my child support, and I had a Nevada driver's license, and the day before my birthday, I went to go renew. And the lady took it from me, and she kept it. And she said, you're not going to get another license because the state of Ohio says you're behind on your child support.
Right.
And I said, well, can they do anything else to me instead? Because I need my driver's license. She said, well, you'll have to talk to them. Yes. Well, here I am in Pahrump, Nevada. My ex-wife and child were in Ohio. I thought, so guess I got to get a plane ticket, go back there. It's just a whole big mess.
Right.
Are there ways to handle these things easily out of state? Because I've heard a lot of that, like, well, you got an issue in Ohio, you got to talk to Ohio. Could I secure an attorney here and get it handled?
Not unless they're licensed in Ohio as well.
Wow.
Unfortunately, yes. But a lot of times the state itself is willing to work with you. They want to get you driving. They want to make you, make you able to pay. So
right.
Even though it seems like the goal is to suspend the license, again, you don't want to take the cave mentality and sit in the cave and not do anything and attempt to drive with the suspended or revoked license.
Yeah.
They'll work with you on even a payment plan. But they want to get something. They want to get some type of structure going with you. So deal with these things. Don't run from them, because you'll just end up in a worser pool than you already are in.
It's a terrible shock when they don't hand your license back.
Yes, yes.
And that's been a couple of years, and I'm still on my bicycle. But I'll get that straightened out. I think we'll have to talk once the camera's off and see what we can do about that. So other areas of family law that you deal with, would that include like adoptions? And
Adoptions, child custody is a very familiar, highly charged area.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
sometimes moms want to have primary physical, or dads want primary physical, or there's, issues that require you to challenge the other parent for custody, whether that be full or, some people don't want to split custody, for example. And so we also handle those things and help you through that process. And, I say family law attorneys aren't only, people call them lawyers, but, the other term for attorneys are counselors. And I think that's especially true in the family law arena, because you've got to get someone to kind of get the emotions charged down, get a neutral understanding of things, and just help you through what is an extremely difficult time.
Right.
Yeah.
Are there severe penalties for someone, not really maliciously, but they take a child on a vacation out of state or out of country or anything like that? People say, this is my kid, I can do what I want, but really you're bound by maybe a divorce decree that you can only do certain things. Do they come down hard on people punishment-wise if they do defy that decree?
And I'll tell you, and this goes to the child support back payment issues as well. Whenever you've got a parent filing a motion to hold you in contempt for a violation of the divorce decree or child support, courts are fairly liberal with awarding attorney's fees. So if mom or dad goes and retains an attorney to try to enforce that divorce decree, and you did something like that you weren't supposed to do, you might not only just end up in trouble, you might also end up paying the other side's attorney's fees, which is quite unpleasant for most people.
Yeah. That hurts.
Especially in the area.
I gotta pay the guy who beat me up.
So your viewers want to know this, especially in the areas of child support, because the judges tend to look at that as a diversion issue, meaning mom or dad has had to take money now to spend on an attorney instead of spending it on the kid, and the courts are going to award the attorney's fees for that. So those can be substantial, in the thousands. So now you've got an award of attorney's fees and what you're in arrears for in child support. Yeah.
Is it possible for someone to file bankruptcy on back owed child support?
Not possible at all. Just like student loans. Yeah, not possible.
Got to pay that.
You got to pay it.
So either pay it or hide in that cave and never come out.
Don't hide in the cave.
Don't hide in the cave. I hear you. That's a bad strategy. Well, what other issues in family law might people want to know about that, don't do it on your own, don't wait, don't hide. Get an attorney and find out the straight scoop on it.
Kind of like what you said, you used a technical term there, a decree. So people try to do things on their own, and they end up drafting the decree, and they end up making a mess out of it because they didn't take down and memorialize all the material terms dealing with visitation and custody, and then there ends up being an argument, there ends up being a fight, and then you end up in court, and now you're spending the money that you could have spent early on to resolve these issues much more easily. You've got much more heartache ahead of you. If you've got some alimony or spousal support, you want to make sure that you have a decree that states when it's payable, how it's payable. The same thing with the child support, and that's what the attorneys can do for you. When you kind of venture into your own territory, then you end up running that dangerous course of forgetting or omitting those things because you're not a lawyer, you don't know.
Yeah.
And then having to deal with those consequences again later on.
Okay, here's one thing I have to ask you. Say the wife who's going to divorce the husband or what have you comes in to see you and she says, I want to destroy this guy. Do you counsel her not to do that? Or if he's really done her wrong and she really deserves a big payday, will you say, okay, we're taking the gloves off and we're going to go after
Well, we
him?
press everybody's rights under the law. And the law affords you certain rights and certain, certain things that you may be, certain relief that you may be afforded. So, I always say you press for everything that you're entitled to under the law. And if you want to pull back later on, then I always let clients make the decision. I've seen clients pull back.
That's nice.
And they decide, you know what, that's fine. I don't want to deal with this. I'll pull back. I don't need this or I don't need that. And there's not an issue with that. And I've seen it the other way where clients just want to press forward for everything they are entitled to, and maybe some things that they're probably not. But,
is there any way we can inflict pain?
But I do counsel clients. I say, well, you may not be entitled to. Let's just use it as an example: spousal support for 10 years. You may be entitled to 5, and the person wants to press forward and go before the judge and ask them for those additional 5 years. If they want to do that against advice, then, and I've had that happen, then they're able to do that. But it all depends on the client. My job's just to tell you what your rights are under the law, rights and responsibilities.
Okay, great. Well, we're just about at the end of the segment here. Anything you'd like to wrap up on here?
Yeah, I was, talking to Vern, and he was mentioning there's a lot of military people, and so I do want to, talk about military divorces for a second, because they're a different beast. So folks in the military, whether they be spouse or husband, know that there's a niche art to a divorce with a military individual. There are enlistment bonuses involved. There are survivor benefit plans. You're going to need a lot of times a qualified domestic relations order in order to get some of those survivor benefits. And so you need an attorney that's able to understand and contemplate all those various issues. So I've dealt with a lot of military divorces, and like I said, they are a niche.
Yeah.
So you
I
want
never
to
thought
make
of
sure.
that, but I can see where maybe even just to go pick your kids up. You're not the custodial parent, and you want to go pick your kids up, but they're on a military base. That
Right.
You
or
can't
you've got
go on.
relocation
All these things
issues
have to
and
be-
all of these different various issues. So
Interesting.
definitely people in the military walk with caution. Whether you're spouse or husband, or wife or husband, you want to make sure that you are looking at all the issues to make sure that the divorce is proper.
Very good. All right. Well, I'd like to thank you for coming in today, Chandan. He is with Las Vegas Litigation Firm. We had the phone number up there and the website, so there's no excuse. And don't be your own attorney. What? How do they say that? A man who has a lawyer for...
As his own client has a client as a fool for a client.
Has a fool for a client, right? And you don't want to find
that applies to lawyers too. Believe it or not, if I was in a divorce, I would retain representation as well.
Yeah. And you don't want to find that out the hard way by losing a case or losing a lot of money. Anyway, that's it for today on Talk TV. Keep it tuned here on the TV Guide channel. At least stop by occasionally and watch us. We'll see you later, and have a great day.